Hello, dear souls. Welcome to our Monday Satsang talk. Let's begin together with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to all. Help us as we study these yogic teachings to dive deeply, to receive the gifts that they offer us, and to know intuitively how to apply them to our life, to awaken in Thee. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, so today we're looking at the final niyama, which is devotion to the Supreme Lord. When I was preparing for this today and thinking about how to talk about it, I know that I'll read a little bit from the Raja Yoga book, The Art and Science of Raja Yoga, and then I thought I'd just, explore a bit about what does it look like to cultivate this niyama in our life and how might we do it. So from the Raja Yoga text, this was written by Swami Kriyananda based on Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings about Raja Yoga. So 5, devotion to the Supreme Lord, is the 5th and last of the rules of niyama. My great guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, once said, "When you find God, you will know that He is a conscious being to whom one can appeal, and not merely some abstract mental state. True devotion is not a slavish attitude. It is only an effort of the heart to lift itself up into that consciousness where divine love is felt and known." So when we're practicing devotion, it's really about the heart and learning how to open up the heart center, open up the quality of feeling and connection, and then lift that energy, lift that feeling to the point between the eyebrows. So Yogananda, this is the 6th chakra. He called this the doorway to infinity, the seat of superconsciousness. And from this point, we sense a kinship with all of life. We see and feel our unity with everything. And we are literally in a higher state of awareness where we can experience the 8 aspects of God. So I've talked about those aspects in this series. So cultivating devotion, I was thinking about, some years ago, I took a advanced training for cardiac yoga teacher training, and this was developed, it's a portion of Dean Ornish's program for reversing heart disease. And so Nishtala Joy Devi came to the Expanding Light, and she gave a 10-day intensive for yoga teachers on how to work with people going through that program, or anyone who has heart disease and is interested in yoga. There's special guidelines to follow. And she was introducing us to the program, kind of giving us a sense of what people go through in that training in case we wanted to work at one of the facilities that offers Dean Ornish's program. And she, throughout the training, shared different stories with us, helping us as yoga teachers to know how to work with others. And she told a story about one of her students who she had been working with him and having him practice yoga, and he'd been practicing for a little while, and she saw no noticeable change in him, which was surprising because yoga postures, they do affect our consciousness, and regular practice of yoga postures is very calming for the nervous system and very uplifting and expansive for the consciousness. So to be practicing regularly and have no visible shift was surprising to her. So she began to talk to her student about his practice. How are you practicing? How's it going? What's it like? And pretty quickly she was able to see that his form of practice was one of duty, right? And so it is a characteristic that they were, well, I see it everywhere, and I can certainly fall into it myself, which is suddenly we relate to everything, and then certainly spiritual practice, as something to get done. Got to get it done, right? So he was relating to his yoga practice in that way. He was faithful, very regular, very responsible, but everything about it was doing. He did it. And because he was doing it, which we would say from a yoga perspective, it was very egoic. There was no point in her, it really wasn't appropriate for her to have that conversation with him. This is again part of our training. What she was saying is what you want to do is help people learn to relate to yoga in a different way. So she sat for a moment and thought about how could I help him? Because simply doing the practice, he had such a strong habit pattern of relating to life in this way of accomplishing tasks, getting them done, perfect score kind of approach. So really talking about it wasn't going to be very helpful for him. And she had an inspired thought, which was very out of the box, right? So she said, okay, I have a different assignment for you this week, right? Keep up with your yoga practice, but I have a different assignment for you. And she said, I want you to go to the children's hospital, and I want you to get a huge bouquet of balloons, helium balloons, and bring them to the hospital. And I want you to walk through the hospital and deliver balloons to the children. Like, okay. So he did that, right? And it changed his consciousness, right? So he did that. And then when she saw him again, how was it? Well, it was amazing because the children, I've never been to children's hospital, but I can imagine that, they're full of a lot of joy. Going through such difficulty tends to be, and understandably, the parents are having a much harder time, parents and caregivers. The children, incredibly resilient, right? And they're children, so they love to play, and balloons are so exciting and how wonderful. And she said, literally, it expanded his heart, this practice, this experience. And she didn't tell him anything else to do other than that, but keep up with your yoga. And she came back, he looked different. And she said, how was your week? And that was it. Like there was, in that moment, it turned a corner for him. And he began, something shifted, right? And I would say that the practice of yoga it's so powerful. Yoga comes from a higher age. So all of the practices and tools of yoga, we relate to them the best we can. We practice, right? But we're doing things that honestly are beyond most of our understanding. They're very, very subtle. And I know I've been practicing for many years, teaching for many years. I can't explain why a pose awakens a certain kind of consciousness. I have no idea why that's true, but I believe it. So I practice with faith. I also practice, as Yogananda said, it's a science. So I test it out and it demonstrates to be true. I just recently was, I continue with my training as part of keeping my certification. You have ongoing training you need to do. And I'm smiling because and on some level, it always feels inconvenient. The classes are wonderful. So part of me looks forward to it, but another part is like, how am I going to fit it in? And the moment I step in, right now it's virtual, to a training, very quickly, I begin to see the power of the practice with another teacher. It shifts things, it opens me to things, it keeps it fresh for me. So part of the practice is sadhana, practicing these little videos you do. And I was falling in a little bit to get it done, get it done, get it done. Like, okay, what's the next sadhana? And basically I got against a deadline. So I had to do a lot in one day. Actually, I had to change my schedule of my day. And I knew in my mind, it's not great to head into sadhana. In this very way I was talking about as this man of like, get it done so I can check the box and say I completed it. And I will say that in this, all of them were great. One of them, oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe it was 10 minutes. Maybe it was a 10-minute sadhana. It was very short. It was a pranayama practice. I was amazed by the practice. I practice and teach pranayama. I was stunned. And I could just notice, right, and being guided and led, and here's the benefit of this practice. I don't know why it's true. I don't know why that really actually lifts the energy to the point between the eyebrows and lifts the prana and expands my consciousness, but I could feel it happening. And right in that moment, was the inward smile of, there again, it works. They're not just saying it, right? It's not just a philosophy. And Yogananda said, don't take my word for it, practice it. Practice it and learn how to practice it in a way. There's in the 12-step community, some of you know I teach in yoga in the 12 steps. So that's, I'm sometimes weaving that into my talks. And there's a beautiful slogan in the 12-step community, which is don't quit before the miracle happens. And really, with sadhana practice, it's that, like, don't quit before you have an opportunity to change, to transform, to shift, to taste what's being offered to you. And Yogananda talked about relating to our spiritual life like a spiritual adventure. Like, let it be an adventure for you. So one of the things to safeguard, to be careful about, is a sense of dogma or dogmatism. Like, oh, here's what I have to do. I need to get it done. I need to do it, where you start to feel confined and constricted. And I'm going to tell you two sides to this coin. Okay, so one side is you want to feel expansive and spacious and this wonderful opportunity to explore what might be here for me. What might this practice help awaken? What might I discover? How can I go deeper? Like, what is it, right, that I'm doing? What's happening? So that's one way where you're curious, right? You're curious. You're just, I don't really know, right? You hear what's said, you're curious. So we talk in yoga postures practice, try to practice as if you'd never practiced before, right? To be in your body and feel your feet like you haven't done it before, because it's so easy to go to sleep once we've done things many times. Oh, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, and you're not really doing it. You're not just really present for what's being offered. So part of it is expansive exploration, freedom, a quality of freedom. The other side to that coin is specific guidelines. So that's interesting too, right? Where discipline and specificity is helpful, or us doing it in a certain way. So again, today I'm talking about Ananda Yoga. I never quite know what's going to come through. So with Ananda Yoga postures, there is a specific flow that we follow. And that flow is all about awakening energy, creating space in the body, creating space in the physical and astral spine, so that energy is rising to this point and going more and more inward. And all that is excess is released, right? So there literally is a guidelines that we follow as teachers and practitioners. It's recommended too, but certainly as teachers, standing poses followed by this, followed by this, followed by this. Now, when you teach, you have this blend of creativity. So it's not meant to confine you. It's not meant to be stifling. Oh darn, I have to do this, I have to do this. That's not the intention. But the idea is to really understand what does what. Gyandev, the director of Ananda Yoga at the Expanding Light, one of his famous, it's called Gyandev's laws for teaching and practice, is teaching in particular, always know why you're doing what you're doing. So when you really understand what's happening, you have a sense of faithfulness, right? Faithfulness to those guidelines. So I'm saying this because without any guidelines, if it's just freedom, if it's just exploration without any sense of channeling, directing the flow of energy, following what's been laid out for us, we can miss a lot, right? It probably could still be beneficial because in the theme of devotion to the Supreme Lord, I'll tell another little story about that. I mean, if your attitude is that it's a good attitude, so it's a good safeguard for you. It's a good safeguard for me. If I have that, it'll protect me in a lot of ways. That being said, I find it a balancing act between discipline, guidelines, follow it in this specific way. So an example in meditation is with Hong Sa. It's a technique that we teach here. There's one of the practices of Hong Sa is a very subtle movement of the right index finger as part of the practice. And for many years, the Hong Sa was taught without that. And at one point, Swamiji had his own realization where it occurred to him that Master taught it using the finger, that index finger, that slight movement. And for some reason, Swamiji hadn't either been practicing it or teaching it. That part I don't know. But he had a realization of the Guru taught it in this way, it should be practiced in this way. So he began then to practice it himself in that way, to bring it back in. Well, many people had learned the technique without it, and it's an unusual thing to bring in if you've learned it without it. What I have found is that if you learn it with it, I've just never really seen anyone have much resistance. They might not quite know how to do it, need some support with that. But if you've learned it without that, it can feel like, why do I have to bring that in? And that came up a lot, and there were lots of conversations. And Swamiji said, well, you don't. You don't have to bring that in. What I'm saying is that Yogananda taught it that way. And it's appropriate, as he said, I find it important to do what the Guru does and what he said. Right? He couldn't explain why it was important. He could say that in discipleship, there is great power in aligning our energy and our consciousness with the teacher, right? With the Guru in this sense. So part of the practice of devotion to the Supreme Lord, that's a big one. It might come easily for you. You might, and this is true for some. For some people, they just love God. It's easy. It doesn't take any effort at all. It's just there. It's natural. It's a great blessing when that's the case. But for many, it's been my experience that that's not automatic. And quite often, God is this, what is God, right? And we talk, Asha's talked about the limiting word God, because in the Western culture, there often is a whole story behind that word. So many people struggle with that word because they feel like, oh, it means all these things. And Asha tells a great story where she was talking with someone who really said, they have difficulty with God and the word God. And she said, well, what do you understand God to be? And they told her, and she said, yeah, that wouldn't work for me either. Like I say God, but God doesn't mean that to me. So, kind of looking for your own self about where are you in the continuum. And what I have found helpful is to kind of take the vast cosmic, reality of the divine, the absolute, and listen within yourself for what resonates for you, what engages your heart, what allows you to feel a sense of connection, to feel a sense of interest, to feel like you'd like to know more. If it's too distant, it can be interesting intellectually, right? But, well, that's interesting, and then you're on to the next thing. Devotion to the Supreme Lord is a practice of a way of being. And that's why I was talking about sadhana first, because learning how to relate to our spiritual life in a way that engages the heart, engages our interest, engages our curiosity, bring it down to something that's tangible, practical, relatable for you. And that includes how comfortable you are in your own heart center. Because some people feel disconnected from feeling too. They just feel like they have no idea how to do that. It's like, well, how do you do that? So as with this one yoga teacher, she was observing that with her student. It would be, she could sense kind of, she had talked about the heart, certainly, but it was too easily a mental concept. So she needed to find a way to help him feel the heart. And then from there, she could help him bring that quality into his yoga practice. So sometimes it's suggested that you look at your life and is there anything that you love? Anything you're fond of, anything you appreciate? And sometimes nature is often a place where people feel inspired and they can sense something greater than themselves in a scene or a place of a natural landscape. Yosemite comes to mind for me. There's certain places that they're awe-inspiring. And in my experience, you don't even have to be there. I can look at picture books and be like, wow, taken there. There's amazing picture books by John Muir. So is it John Muir? I think it is. I'll see if a different name comes to me. I think it's him. So the idea is finding something that awakens within you devotion. I like doing this. I enjoy doing this. And this definitely can be people in your life, children, family, a beloved. And tuning into that quality and seeing how you might bring that more into your spiritual practice, right? And it really is a practice, is what I want to say. Kirtan, chanting, music, sacred music. Yogananda said, chanting is half the battle. That music bypasses the mind. So that's another way, if you have no idea, right? You sense within yourself, like, sounds good, but I don't know how to do it. Chanting can really be a way that awakens the heart energy and the heart center. What we practice at Ananda with Kirtan is this experience of awakening energy. It gets to a point where it's really dynamic, right? Like joyful, dynamic, engaging, powerful, and then quiet. And we alternate between awakening the energy, getting it moving, getting it something happening, and then be very, very quiet. And so you alternate between that. So that's one way. If you have something else in your life, like pets or gardens or something that you enjoy, you can be in it and then be quiet and feel. Like, oh, I was just with my kitty a few moments ago. He came in from being outside and he was really wanting attention, right? And I love him. And so I was giving him lots of attention and he was loving it. And that's like this beautiful little bond moment, right? This sweet little moment of connection. So you can have that, appreciate it. My heart was very engaged. And then sit with that feeling. Right? Sit with that feeling like, okay, that's the heart. That's what it feels like to be there. And bring that more into your life and your day, because the more that's happening, the easier it is to bring to all of our practices. I want to go back to the story or the theme about, this idea of devotion. So Swamiji was talking about devotion to his guru. And he was teaching that through example. Like, well, I want to be aligned with my guru. He's my guru. So I want to do what he did and what he taught, to be in tune with him. So another way to practice this, if you have a guru, then definitely that. If you don't, and that feels like a distance, how do you do that? To bring it closer to anyone you appreciate in your life who's offered you guidance and support. Right? A good friend, a good soul friend maybe, or a teacher that they've made a difference in your life, right? You rely on the gifts that they offer you to help you stay on track, right? The blessing of a teacher, a true teacher. And so it is also this practice to be one of practicing gratitude. Gratitude awakens the heart center, and it's a very pure energy. Appreciation, gratitude. So another practice you can have is take some time each day. And one way there's two ways of doing it. One is pick 3 things, another is pick 5. So start with whatever feels better to you. But at the end of the day, write down 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. They can be very tiny and you can repeat them, right? If you feel like, oh, I don't know, I'm grateful I can see. That's a big thing, actually. So you could write that down. I'm grateful that I had food to eat today. These are really basic things, but they can also be big things. I'm grateful for the sunlight. I'm grateful for the kindness of a friend. I'm grateful for my kitty. I'm grateful for. This cultivates that same quality of vibration of devotion. Devotion to the Supreme Lord is an offering, and in doing that, in living in that way, we actually find the truth of that divinity inside ourselves. So as in one sense, I'm doing this, I'm offering, I'm thank you, I'm grateful, but what happens in that practice is it's opening up within me that same grace that is present, that is there all the time. The yoga practices are a practice of self-realization. So it seems like I'm doing. Like, okay, well, I'm doing and I'm trying to do it with high thinking and a right attitude. That's good. It's a good practice. Okay, I'm trying to do it with a heart. Okay, that's good. But all the doing is about being, really. All the doing is a way of shedding, releasing, letting go, becoming free from the small identity, the small self, into the highest self. The guru, the spiritual teacher, is always calling forth and helping us to see our own true nature. So what seems like I don't know how else to say it. It's an act of humility for sure. And I've just come back to what seems like giving. It is giving, but it is a giving that draws the energy of receiving. And giving allows us to be receptive to receive. If I'm not practicing this quality, this niyama of devotion, open heart, gratitude, when the blessings come, they'll flow right by me. They'll flow right by me. There's a beautiful poem. In fact, I'll share one from Whispers from Eternity, which is, and I heard a similar version to this many years ago about Jesus. It was a beautiful poem that said, I see you basically everywhere. I see you in the sunrise. I hear you in the wind. I saw you today in a beautiful flower. Oh, I noticed you in the smile of my friend. These are qualities and practices of seeing God and giving thanks to God and offering our heart and our life then to God. So this is a prayer from Yogananda from Whispers from Eternity, 144. Make me feel Thee through the touch of the breeze. Father, let me feel Thee through the touch of the breeze, through the sunshine warming my body. Enter through my nostrils with the fragrance of flowers. Let me cognize Thee through my innermost thoughts. Forget me never, even if I forget Thee. Remember me always, even if I remember Thee not. Be with me always, always, always. Father, let me feel Thee through the touch of the breeze, through the sunshine warming my body. Enter through my nostrils with the fragrance of flowers. Let me cognize Thee through my innermost thoughts. Forget me never, even when I forget thee. Remember me always, even if I remember thee not. Be with me always, always, always. Let's practice this week the opening to God, the looking for God, the listening, and how the divine is coming to you, wanting to come to you. Find your way of relating with the heart to the divine. Wishing you a beautiful week, friends. I'll see you next time. Many, many blessings to you.